We are in the second week of our Lenten series, Healed, looking at the place healing has in the Christian life. Last week we went back to the beginning. We looked at how we were created for relationship and trust, and how something broke. Shame entered the story. Hiding entered the story. And we acknowledged something that is true for every single one of us. We are wounded. Not because we are uniquely defective, not because we failed more than anyone else, but because we live in a broken world. That was the first truth that we began to uncover, that all of us are broken in various ways, and we live in a broken world, which means that all of us are in need of healing. The second truth is that healing wasn't peripheral to Jesus' ministry. It was central. Along with preaching and teaching, it's what he did. He came to bring healing to broken bodies, broken hearts, broken relationships, and a broken world. Which means he came to bring healing to you and to me. And then the third truth. Healing is mysterious. There is no formula. There's no guaranteed method. Divine healing and faith go together, and it requires trust. Last week, we spent time sitting with that reality, that having wounds is simply part of what it is to be human and the human condition. And it's true, isn't it, that we all have wounds. Physical wounds, emotional wounds, relational wounds, mental wounds, spiritual wounds. Some wounds are shallow, others are deep. Some are old and familiar, others are fresh and raw. Some of us are struggling with a diagnosis that changed everything, while others live with chronic pain. Those are physical wounds. Some carry emotional wounds like anxiety, anger, or shame. Others carry spiritual wounds like doubt, discouragement, and even despair. Some wounds are self-inflicted, especially from our own selfishness or sin. And then, of course, there are wounds that are imposed on us. Loss, grief, betrayal. Those wounds of the heart can be the deepest ones of all. The question is not whether you have wounds in life. The question is, what do you do with them? How do you handle them? At the end of the day, we really only have two options. We can rely on ourselves, or we can rely on the Lord. If we rely on ourselves, I think we can expect limited success. Sure, we might manage, we might cope, we might distract ourselves and just power through, but eventually our strength runs out. If we rely on the Lord, well then that opens up unlimited possibilities. Jesus came to renew and restore everything that was broken. Scripture says, "Behold, I make all things new." He came to restore all things to their intended wholeness. He came to heal you and to make you new. But for that to happen, we have to actually acknowledge our need for healing. And then there's another step, and that's what we're going to look at today. It comes in a single, simple instruction that is found in the 17th chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel. It was our Gospel today, where we read, "Jesus took Peter, James, and John his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves." Now, in his public ministry, Jesus always had lots and lots of people around him. Crowds of curious onlookers, friends and followers, dozens of disciples, and then, of course, the 12 apostles. And within the 12, he had a special friendship with 3 of them, Peter, James, and John. Here, Jesus takes them up a mountain to pray. And in prayer, they experience something extraordinary. Check this out. "And he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him." On the mountaintop, Jesus is transfigured. So what does that mean? Well, Jesus is fully human and fully divine. But most of the time, his divinity is hidden, except in this moment. Here, his glory shines through his humanity. Moses and Elijah appear. These are two towering figures of the Old Testament. And it's dazzling. It's overwhelming, beyond what Peter, James, and John can even process or try to understand. And then we hear the voice of God the Father say, "This is my Son, the Beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." Now, this is the second time in the Gospel that the Father publicly affirms his Son. The first time, you might remember, was at his baptism, before Jesus began his public ministry. And now, towards the end of his ministry, in the shadow of the cross, the Father speaks again. And the instruction is incredibly simple. Listen to him. Listen to him. St. Matthew continues. When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome by fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. The moment is overwhelming. Right? Glory, the voice, fear. And then, just like that, it's over. And they see no one else except Jesus standing there alone. As they're coming down the mountain, Jesus commands them to tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. Now, over and over again, Jesus told the apostles that he was going to the cross, that he was going to suffer and die, and then rise again from the dead. But they never really understood what he was talking about. Why? Well, because they sort of had this preconceived notion of who Jesus was. They were looking for a political leader, a revolutionary, someone who would overthrow the Roman oppressors. That's who they thought the Messiah would be. So whenever Jesus speaks about suffering, about dying and rising again, they didn't really know what to do with that. It didn't fit their expectations. It was not until after the resurrection on Easter Sunday that the fuller picture started making sense. The Transfiguration, which is what this event is called, is meant to show us something important. It connects Christ's humiliation to his glory. It foreshadows both his passion and his resurrection. And there are some remarkable parallels between the Transfiguration and his passion. In both moments, Jesus invites Peter, James, and John to join him. In both, he climbs up a mountain. In both, he's lifted up between two men. But there are also stark contrasts. At the Transfiguration, everything is light. At the crucifixion, darkness covers the earth. At the Transfiguration, his clothes become dazzling white. At the crucifixion, he's stripped. At the Transfiguration, he stands between these two heroes from Israel's history. At the crucifixion, he hangs between two criminals. At the Transfiguration, his hidden glory is revealed. At the crucifixion, he is publicly humiliated. These parallel and yet contrasting events teach us two very profound spiritual insights. First, God can use our wounds. They are not meaningless, right? Through the cross, Jesus won an incredible victory. And now, he is the name above every other name. And every knee shall bow and every tongue shall one day confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. The ultimate end of his woundedness was not defeat. It was victory. And the same can be true for us. Any wound, every wound you experience is not the final word on who you are. The wounds you suffer do not have to define you. Now, please hear me. I am not saying that God causes your wounds. I'm not saying that. I am saying that the infinite wisdom of God is such that he can take what is painful and bring about something redemptive. He can take what feels like a loss and bring about growth. He can take your wounds and out of them bring about victory. And sure, that might sound strange. It might even sound hard to believe. But what if it's true? What if your woundedness could become the very place of exchange? You bring him your pain, your hurt, your fear, your confusion, your wounds, and he gives you his grace, his peace, his strength, and his victory. Here's the second thing we need to see. Jesus willingly lays down his life in order to take it up again. If he didn't die, we couldn't live. If he was not wounded, we could not be healed. Jesus is the wounded healer, which is why you can listen to him. And it's hard to take advice from someone who has never walked your road or walked a mile in your shoes. But Jesus has. He felt the mental anguish of knowing ahead of time that he was going to suffer. He felt physical pain too. The thorns, the scourging, the nails piercing through his hands and feet. It didn't exactly feel pleasant, I can't imagine. He experienced the emotional wounds, right? Being abandoned and betrayed and having to watch his friends scatter and to see his mom standing there at the foot of the cross. And most of all, he felt the spiritual pain as the Lamb of God who comes to take away the sins of the world, feeling the full weight of humanity's sin. He knows what wounds feel like, and he overcame them through the resurrection. As a consequence, healing comes from an encounter with Jesus, in which you listen to him. So we need to learn to listen to him, or maybe better, become better at listening. Because when you read the Gospels, you see that he healed people in so many different ways. Sometimes he used a healing touch. Sometimes he spoke words of consolation. Sometimes there were miracles. Every healing was different. Same for you. Same for me. Every healing is different because every wound is different. Your wounds are unlike anyone else's. They develop under unique circumstances. They're shaped by your story, your experiences, and your relationships. So your healing will be entirely unique to you. That's why real healing and wholeness grow in relationship with the Lord. And if we're not listening, if we're not paying attention, we could actually miss out entirely on what the Lord is trying to do. Jesus is not an anonymous force. He's not a good luck charm or a genie in a bottle. He's not an insurance policy or a last resort. He's a person. He's a person. As a man, he knows what you're going through. And as God, he can do something about it. And here's the beautiful part. He really wants a personal relationship with you. Not a distant one, but a personal one that grows. And often, that growth happens precisely through the healing of our wounds. Over the course of this series, we want to offer different opportunities to experience healing in concrete ways. One of the opportunities that is already built into the rhythm of our parish during Lent is this. On Fridays, we have Eucharistic adoration at 11 a.m., just before our 12:10 Mass. It's simple, quiet, no pressure. It's just time in His presence. And honestly, that kind of quiet presence before the Lord can be one of the most powerful places of healing. I like to call that FaceTime with Jesus. Because you come as you are. You bring your wounds. You speak honestly. You ask Him to show you what needs healing. And then you listen to Him. You sit there, gazing upon His glory, looking at Him. And He gazes upon you. He looks at you. Listen to Him. See, that instruction, listen to Him, from the Father on the mountain, was not just for Peter, James, and John. It's for us too. The question is not whether you have wounds. The question is, what will you do with them? And at the end of the day, we really only have two options. Sure, we can keep carrying them ourselves, or we can bring them to the one who knows exactly what wounds feel like and who has already overcome them. Listen